Hi guys, Acesup here, and we are up to episode 3 now. 2 months, 40k. I am 3/4 through this session. Just wanted to bring you an update. I had one final table. It was only a small, I think it was a $5 or $10. I think I've been playing pretty good this session compared to the last 2 sessions. Opened up the game a bit, a lot more 3-betting, and yeah, I'm just feeling a bit better about decisions, which is to be expected because I had a bit of a break, time off, and then trying to get back into it. I feel like you always start a bit rusty. It does take you a little bit just to get back into the swing of things. And definitely with poker, I think that's the case. With anything, I guess, it's normally the case. I remember I hadn't ridden my motorbike for a while, and then when I got back on it, it feels a bit weird for a little bit, and then everything back to normal after a short while. Sometimes with poker, it's more than a short while. Sometimes it takes you a little bit longer to get right back into the swing of things. I feel like I'm playing. I feel like I'm playing pretty good. Is probably how I would sum it up. I feel like I'm playing pretty good. Not great. Not my best poker by any means. Probably could have c-bet on the top left. I think it's a mistake there checking. Having said that, I was just playing pretty good. I would bet now. It's not the best card, but he's had an opportunity to bet and he hasn't taken it, and we look pretty weak. So I think a lot of the time he's probably got a hand he's giving up with. Once in a while, I guess you could have. What can he have? Yeah, I mean, if you check raises, if you can ever have a hand, if he's ever got a hand, I guess it would be the nuts if you check raised, so I guess you could have a semi bluff some of the time, or just a spaz out. But there's not many hands that should be check raising, and I'm going to go ahead and bet now. I think Jack Queen. I mean, he tanked turn, and I think that's a hand that might donk lead. To be honest. I think that's a hand that might donk lead turn after a check back flop, since we look so weak. I wouldn't say this value bet is necessarily thin. He might be controlling with like a 6-8 or something like that. I'd be pretty surprised if he had Jack Queen here, but I mean, it's not impossible. And he's mini raised. So I guess it's looking a bit like King 9 or Jack Queen. He could have, I guess, King Jack, and have called for a gut shot with overs and go for some really, really thin value with this mini raise. That's probably a bit unlikely. Once in a while, I guess, we've just gone for the thin value. Once in a while, I guess, he could have, I was going to say, well, I mean, once in a while, I think he can think that maybe we didn't bet flop and then just bet turn, and then when we bet river, I mean, it doesn't make too much sense, because ace 10 would probably check. It might bet, but it might check back. So there's not really many hands that we should be betting for value, unless we've hit the king or somehow backed into a kind of unexpected hand. And yeah, I mean, it's a pretty thin bet. I guess the King Jack, King Queen is kind of part of his range. And like I was saying, I should have just c-bet the flop. So that was not a well-played hand at all. We are hand for hand now, so that's interesting. Yeah. Definitely with the presence of the backdoor flush and the backdoor straight as well as the 1-over card, I think it's a pretty clear c-bet against a big blind who can be very wide, and it's a very dry board. So just a slip of concentration, really. Just busy chatting and click check, which is a bit, if you want to have a habit of clicking something, it's probably better to have a habit of clicking bet. It's probably just a bit better betting rather than checking. Yeah. King 5 and 13. Just going to fold. This guy's been pretty tight here, it looks like. Small blind's probably just being a loose fish, would be my guess. We've seen a lot of that going on today, as always, on AAA poker at these stakes. Seems to be almost the norm. Used to have a lot of, well, you know, crazy type plays going on. Yeah. See if we can't build these stacks a bit more. I'm still a bit upset about my King 3 hand. You can see we have a chip lead. It's only a very small $5 tournament. But you know, as I always say, they all add up. I wonder if we ever could have... I think it's just a little bit too likely with the King 3 that... not likely, but the possibility that he has Jack Queen is a little bit too worrying. Just given the amount of combos that it is, since he's likely to call pre with, you know, any Jack Queen, which is 16 combos, and can be a decent part of his range. So, the reason why I mentioned that is because just thinking if we can have a bluff, turn our hand into a bluff on the river and make a huge re-raise, or jam something funky. Bottom left. These guys have been pretty tight, so just trying to exploit that. The big blind hasn't defended yet. 0-4. Yeah, I mean, it's a very limited sample, but I would have probably have called anyway if he jammed. So you know, it's not the end of the world. Even though we would have obviously been behind most of the time. Given that pot odds, it would have been okay. And this guy here's been tight as well. Hasn't been opening that much, and he's only 3-bet 1%, and that's over 219 hands. So it's more of a reasonable sample size. And same with this guy, he's been tight to warm up. And so when you put all that together, definitely want to be stealing against these guys. And this guy here as well. I mean, it's actually a pretty tight table. From what I can see, it's actually a very tight table. So probably going to be looking to open a lot. They do have sort of jammy stacks, these guys, which is obviously a little bit concerning. Excuse me, guys. M6. M6. Yeah. 12, 18, 24, 30, 36, 42, 48. Pocket 4s, 39. Yeah. I think folding those okay, but I don't think it's a big mistake to jam it, just because we are so short. But I think we can find a better spot. Just let the blinds pass and try and get something with less players behind. That's going to have some equity anyway if called. Or this ace-10 might work out for us if we get a late position player opening. Go ahead and slam it in. 9 to 11. Yeah, this guy is probably just... We get really good leverage against his stack, but he probably hasn't been opening quite enough for me to try anything there, but certainly got to keep our eyes open. This one I was probably going to attack, I guess. This guy's been kind of tight, so... That's a $5 buy-in. No, $11. Okay, yeah. Interesting that he ISO'd the limper. The limper has not been limping much. I probably would have just let that one go, I think. The Jack-8 suited. I would not have isolated, but small isolation is an option. Top right, obviously, in goes the Ace-10, and bottom right... I think I'm probably going to just treat this guy as a kind of a default sort of low stakes buying guy that could be overplaying and make the call. And I guess we're probably just going to get in on this flop now. Because I think there's a few hands he can have that that we crush, like 7s, 8s, 9s, although of course we wouldn't be crushing them now, and he has checked. If he's got aces or 8s or 9s, it's probably a nice play. Most of the time I think he's going to have ace-king, so I'm definitely going to jam here because I think he calls with that, with a heart, and sometimes without as well, just because, you know, he could have the best hand, the way the hand's been played. And he has got aces, so I think he played that. I think he played that nicely, and it's kind of unfortunate that we ran into that hand. You know, pre-flop, when I said he was, I'm going to kind of treat him as like a, you know, low stakes player. It's possible, I think, to fold there. You know, if we know he's tight, you know, he's a decent player and he's kind of tightish, I think that folding would definitely be reasonable because he's probably going to have aces, kings, queens, and if not ace-king, he shouldn't really be 3-betting 10s and 9s. I mean, 10s maybe, 9s, it's getting down a bit low. And if we don't think he's got, you know, many bluffs, if we don't think he has many bluffs in his range, then you know, most players don't in that spot. That's the thing about it. You know, it's not many players in that spot have, you know, ace-5 or, you know, king-10 sort of things that we're doing well against. Yeah, in general, you know. So, against the UTG Open, of course. You guys know what I'm talking about, right? I hope so. I guess for given our stack size, I think jamming and calling are both okay. I will obviously get in it in now. Jamming pre-given the pot odds can never be bad. Calling just gives us, I think, a slightly better scenario since we can fold on bad boards and save, you know, our last 2,000. And obviously if we get a hand like a pair with a backdoor flush like this, then, you know, we just have enough equity to roll. Because if someone calls out 2k, there's 5 in there, we're getting, what's that, like 4.5 to 1? Yeah, so we don't need, what's that, like 18%, 17% or something equity. So even against the hand, if he showed his queens with the 3, 4, 5 outs, what's that, 20%? But he can redraw a couple of times, so we're probably getting, even if he shows his queens, you know, the play is okay. But sometimes they'll just be folding, and sometimes they might even just call with worse, just because it's such a cheap price. So I think that hand was played okay. It's just one of those things about being short, you know. It's just the timing. You got to take what you can at that stage. It was the jacks that did it, obviously. But yeah, I mean, I just don't think. I just brought in a nothing table, didn't I? I brought in a nothing table. Yeah, I mean, I just don't think I can quite fold jacks against an unknown at that buy-in level. I just think it's a little bit too high up. I had a similar situation before, and the player had, was it 7s or 8s, I think? 7s or 8s? Yeah, it may be 7s. I think he had 7s. It was quite a similar situation, so I just think they've got a little bit too much. I mean, Ace-Jack as well, I saw earlier in that sort of spot. I am obviously sort of clumping players together. You know, here with, excuse me, clumping everyone together. I think the bottom left raise is definitely okay. The top left one is obviously on the loose side. Yeah, what I was saying before about this table being pretty tight, bottom left we want to keep opening, and the top left one, I mean, that's not that loose either. I mean, that's pretty tight. And we're UTG, and we got a semi-playable hand, so we don't really have that many deep stacks behind us, though, so, you know, when we're opening it, I'm going to bet pretty small bottom left, and just try and set up the SPR. I give myself a little bit more room for betting on later streets. I think I will bet the 9. It's a little bit alarming that this guy's called behind, but I mean, he's been pretty loose, so he can have 7s, 8s. He may even fold 10s and stuff like that. If he's called, if he's that high up in his range, and he hasn't 3-bet because we open UTG pre. I guess he can have King, Queen, and King, Jack and stuff too. I don't think he floats because of the presence of the players behind. And the bet size, you know, I tried to make it large enough that it would deter a sort of a loose call, just so we get clearer information with our 9. We could probably have checked that, you know, that many players in, but I just feel, you know, we've got the 5 outs, and some of the time they'll just fold, but, you know, we have open UTG, so we can represent a big ace. I'm going to bet small on the bottom right, just to prevent this player from just... A lot of times when you check, they just auto-bet. And if he does auto-bet, we can't call, so... But at the same time, if we bet, I mean, we might get folds. It's a little bit wet, though, this board, but the C-bet was small, so it doesn't really have to work that often. 8, 9, 9, 10 suited, maybe diamonds, jack. What else can he have? Hasn't raised. He can have A7, I guess. I think I'm going to bet again here. It's pretty close, but this guy's been kind of loose. And I had bet to just be done with the hand, but now he's called. It's kind of... I mean, now we've got the Queen of Diamonds. It kind of makes me want to... well, a limp and then a jam top left, 15. And he's quite short, and it's only a limp. He's the guy that limp folded before. I was 15. I think we're just going to get that in. Yeah, I mean, I think I will check on the bottom right. I mean, he can have diamonds. I think he could play it passively. Yeah, and I mean, once he calls turn... Yeah, I mean, I just don't think... I think he's calling a little bit too often, given that we didn't have a deep enough stack, but, you know, the intention was really not so much to set it up for a barrel, but just to try and take it down on the turn, since he's kind of loose and he's just called flop. I thought if he had a jack, he might raise flop, especially since we're kind of short, so he might just say, hey, I'll just get it in against this guy. You know, you had a player behind to worry about. So just calling, a top pair on that sort of board is a little bit dangerous. Multi-way, I thought he might just sort of try and isolate to the short stack. At least that's what I would have done. But you got to be careful presuming that these guys are thinking along the lines or in the same way that you're thinking. And that's one of the hard elements of the game, is kind of presuming people are looking at things with the same sort of logic that you would use, when often they're using a very different system. And it's just one of the challenges of the game, is trying to adjust, especially with MTTs, because it's such a mixed bag, and especially in the low stakes, because you've got your decent players, low stakes grinders, you've got probably a spattering of like high stakes regs as well, but there's just not enough tourneys to play, so they add in some low stuff. And of course you got your all the way down to your massive fish. I think I will just 3-bet get this in. I think it's profitable. I've done some maths on this type of scenario before, and it seems pretty profitable. The thing about it is that I think he folds enough on the 3-bet, because he does have a depth where he could, he's just deep enough where he could be opening to fold. But the times he does call, if the pre-flop profit from the hand from 3-betting is not profitable enough, once we actually 3-bet any jams, we're getting really good odds to call with that sort of hand king jack against a range that's probably going to be something like 5. Ooh, I think I might call the bottom right there. I could definitely jam, but better to flop top pair and then check raise or something like that. 10, 11. I think I'm just going to jam. Could have called, but this guy's been kind of tight from early. Yeah, it's pretty close, I guess. 9, 10, 11. King, queen, coming up call. 1, 10, 11. 1,000 players behind. I think I'm going to wait. Yeah. Once, just going back to what I was saying, lost my train of thought there for a minute. The king jack, if he's jamming with like 6s or 7s up, and ace 8, well, ace 9 suited, ace 8 suited, maybe ace 9 off or ace 10 up. King queen is obviously bad for us. Jack queen suited, maybe. We're doing pretty good against that range, especially when you consider the pot odds being offered once we make the 3-bet. So, between the fact that when we make the raise pre-flop, he's going to fold quite a bit, and if he doesn't any jams, we can always then call profitably. And I think when you compare those EVs against that sort of player who's says he's been stealing a lot late and has a stack size where he could be still stealing, I think it's okay to make that play. And in MTTs you have to be looking for spots to find chips. You have to be going after pots. I can go either way here. I think I'm going to call, but I could definitely squeeze it. If we squeeze it and the initial opener, or the player behind for that matter, but that's less likely, if the initial opener jams at that stack depth, it's pretty annoying, because you're probably going to have to fold if he 4-bets a squeeze there, and our hand, we really want to see a flop with it, since we can be multi-way and in position as well. If I thought he had a little bit of a wider range, I would probably be more inclined to go with a squeeze. And I'm just going to half pot call off here. If he's got King Jack, Jack 9, clubs, a 10, King 10, 9, 10, You know, he's probably going to continue in the hand, maybe even jam, and if he's got a queen, it's just bad luck. But our hand did need a little bit of protection. And I mean, we could check it, I guess. It is a candidate. So it is one of the candidates for checking, I guess. But we do have the backdoor club as well. And I mean, there's not that many hands. I don't think he's going to stab against the UTG opener on that board. You know, unless we know he's a prolific stabber. So, you know, part of the reason to check that flop would be that we think that we can induce action on later streets, but I just don't know if he's gonna defend and then all of a sudden just start stabbing away on the turn. So what I'm really trying to say is if he's got a hand he's gonna bet turn with, he's probably got a hand that's calling flop with anyway. So we might as well just start betting. Since it's not going to make too much difference, I think, to his range. Since I don't think he's going to have a very bluffy, stabby range that we can get him to just flip out with on that sort of board against a UTG opener. It's kind of right on, isn't it? M4 is jammed. It's a big raise, bottom right. I'm going to fold. Ace 4 against an M4 jam from big blind. Probably can't quite fold it. But again, it depends a lot on villain. You know, if he doesn't understand, you know, power numbers and short stacking ranges and that sort of thing, we're going to run into hands like we did a lot. But if he does understand jam ranges and stuff like that, then he should have a PN there of what was the M4, 4, 8, 12, 16, 20. He should have a PN above 20. So he's going to be jamming hands like Queen 9 suited, Queen 10 suited, King 9 suited up, Jack Queen, King 10 would be borderline, you know, stuff like that. And since we're the big blind and we've already got money in, and we're short as well, so I don't really mind kind of taking the risk. Even though I don't think it's very profitable, I don't think it's bad, and at the same time we need to try to get some chips because we're short. So even if we can just eke out a little bit of EV from it and give ourselves the opportunity to get a few more chips, I think it's okay. Kind of got ourselves into trouble in the bottom left here. Because a little bit too cheap to fold there. Because, you know, we've limped behind, and I just don't know if we can fold now. If we think that he can ever have diamonds or 10 jack, or just have a queen and be betting, then SPR's already won. It would be pretty catastrophic if he actually has a hand that we're ahead of or has a bet folding range. And I think that getting it in can't really be that bad. But folding could be catastrophic if he, as he did, just snap folds. So, you know, you don't expect him to have that many bluffs normally, traditionally, in that spot. You don't expect a player to have that many bluffs. But I think at these stakes, one of the mistakes these guys make that you can exploit is the fact that a lot of the times they have a very unbalanced proportion of bluffs to value bets. And they just bluff with, you would recall from previous parts, we saw some bluffs with 100% of hands where guys have like bet with like 3-5 off on like a king, queen, jack, 8 board, 7 on the river, and they've just like fired a couple of barrels with, you know, 3-5 high, and that sort of thing where, you know, they're obviously, if they're doing it with 3-5, they're doing it with their entire range. Because it doesn't get much worse than 3-5. if they had some blockers or something, or ace high, or even maybe you can. What some players might do if they do have either a predetermined sort of strategy or even just a on-the-spot strategy that might entail playing a slightly balanced range, they might have some hands that they would decide to bluff with. They might be like, okay, the ace blocker here with the nut flush blocker or something, or the gut shot, the straight draw, being blocked here is one of the hands I'm going to bluff with or whatever. So whereas these guys just bluff everything. And so that being the case, that king 8 becomes an easier call. And it's part of the reason why I called with the jacks before, is just because without having concrete information on a player, you got to kind of roll with a bit of a default strategy. And as a default, with jacks in that spot before, I'm not really going to be folding. If I'm against a tight reg and a higher stake tourney, I don't have a problem with it. And I will just bet here against Spency again. It's kind of a dry board, isn't it? Well, I think we're going to turn our hand into a little bluff now on the bottom left. I'm just thinking. Pretty hard for him to call down with a queen now, given we raised an early position. I don't think he's going to expect us to turn a hand into a bluff too often. Just thinking if we can have a call here on the top left just because of the odds. He might call down here with a queen, I guess. I probably should have bet slightly smaller on the turn. If he's got a set, he's definitely going to call down. Yeah, that's kind of unlucky. We ran into that hand, obviously. I think I will fold just because this raise size here is a little bit alarming. And we could be crushed by aces. But yeah, I almost got suckered in with the pot odds. It's probably really not too much point betting bottom right. I think we're just going to check and call river if he stuffs it in. Hopefully he hasn't got ace 4 or something crazy like that. I'm just going to, before I call, I'm just going to throw him a trophy. And then call. And he has got the jack. He has got the jack. So, yeah, I mean, that's not too bad play by him, really, was it? I mean, he's just called flop. I hope that we had kind of a wide range with barrel. He got a really bad turn card. So, we could have a king, or potentially it just makes it a little bit harder for him to get value. So the check made sense, and then he did manage to squeeze out some value on the river, so well played him. And I just don't think we can fold, because I think players in that spot are calling 3-bets too loose, and his line didn't make a lot of sense unless he's got a jack that he's slow played. I guess maybe king 10 of diamonds sometimes, but or a trap, but I think, again, players will have a little bit too bluffier ranges in spots like that. I think I'm just going to fold top left here. It's kind of nitty. I was kind of set mining. This guy's been really tight. Oh, actually, I wouldn't say really tight, but let's see. Overall, he's only raised 1 of 11. Hasn't 3-bet yet. He did 3-bet us when we raised UTG. He has bet pretty large. So I think folding is okay. And to bottom right, it's kind of marginal because we could be drawing dead sometimes. But I think if we get an ace or a 9, we kind of always get paid off by someone that has an ace or 3 jacks and maybe even a queen. And I'm going to call top right because we have the best hand and because we can hold up. There's a few different things we could have done bottom right if we were a little bit deeper. I mean, we could fold. Sometimes we could even like semi-bluff raise. So, and we were drawing dead, so you know that's was always going to be a concern. And we're just lucky we didn't hit, I guess. This top left hand's pretty close. We've got the guy we said was potentially kind of tight. I decided, because we're kind of deep too, just to defend. I would 3-bet this hand some of the time. And he's fired big again, so I think I'm going to continue just playing a little bit tight against this guy until he shows me the complete random hand later when we discover that he's just barreling with absolutely nothing and is just a complete maniac, which is pretty likely. But until that happens, I think I'm just going to keep playing a bit tight against him. And here we've opened M7 and been jammed on. I think I'm actually going to fold, which is kind of a little bit nasty. And unfortunately, the top right didn't work out there.